God.
Let's go, Tigers.
Is it a game this weekend?
Time.
You know who's coming
Get
out
this
in a
win.
half hour?
Ed Ogeron.
Coach O will be live with
the
us.
best coach in the country.
And we can tell you,
Monster himself.
well, officially as of last night, he is the coach of the number 2 team in America because the first college football playoff ranking of the season has Ohio State debuting at number 1. It's the first time a Big Ten team has topped the ranking. LSU, Alabama, and Penn State round out the top 4. So if the season ended right this minute, which of course it does not, those would be the 4 teams playing it off for the national championship. Now, those 4 teams will meet in short order, including, of course, the game this weekend. And what it all means is that Clemson is outside the top 4 despite having won 24 consecutive games. They've spent 24 straight weeks in the top 4, and they're the defending national champs. Their streak was the longest of its kind in the playoff era, which dates back to 2014. So you say to yourself, how can Clemson be out of this? Clearly, their strength of record is what keeps them out. Joey Galloway's with us here, and of course, Mr. Feinbaum. Joey, I'll start with you. Do you have an issue with the defending national champs not being in the top 4?
I don't have an issue. No, I would have them at number 1 personally, but I don't have an issue. We're in the middle of the season, and all these teams have to play one another. And if you're Clemson, I wouldn't have an issue either. I think they use it as motivation.
What do you think, Paul?
Dabo Swinney went out last night and got an RC Cola and a pizza and celebrated because he can finally be an underdog again. He didn't like being number 1. They didn't play very well, and now I think Clemson is the most dangerous team in the country.
Yeah, so they sit at number 5, and listen, they're going to, if they win out, they get in. There are certain teams that control their own destiny, and then there are those that need help. And yesterday you told me, watch Georgia and Oregon. We want to try and bring you some information here that isn't quite so obvious. So you said watch where they put Georgia and Oregon. What was the significance of Georgia being ahead of Oregon?
Well, the committee is obviously valuing Georgia's win over Notre Dame and obviously the win over Florida. And Oregon sitting out there hoping against hope. They don't have anything left on the schedule that will help them until the Pac-12 championship game against Utah. That could be a very highly ranked game. The Pac-12 is not dead yet, but the Big Ten and the SEC were the beneficiaries last night.
Oregon is 7, Utah is 8. They could play each other in the Pac-12 championship game. In your opinion, Joey, do the 2 big teams in the Pac-12 control their own destiny, or do they need help?
Well, they're going to get help. The teams play. Ohio State, Penn State play. LSU, Alabama this weekend, they play. We have championship games. So there's going to be some movement ahead of them. I think if I'm the Pac-12, I'm very excited about 2 teams inside the top 10 because if they get to the championship game and somebody makes a statement, then they'll be in the conversation.
When I look down this sheet, and by the way, ESPN prints me out this sheet that has more information on it than any piece of paper I've ever been given in my life, and I love it. We're sitting there at number 12 with Baylor unbeaten and number 17, Minnesota unbeaten. Do those teams control their destiny?
No. Minnesota does. Minnesota's a team nobody has thought about this year. They have a big game this week against Penn State. Should PJ Fleck's team win out, they are going to the college football playoff. That's the good news, Greeny. The bad news is they're underdog in 3 of the 4. Conversely, Baylor is going to be a favorite in 3 of the 4. They'll have to beat Oklahoma in a couple of weeks. I don't know if that will be enough to get them in.
I agree completely on Minnesota, because to get there, by definition, they'd have to beat the teams that are right now number 1 and number 4. Is there enough in the Big 12? In theory, could Baylor run the table, be an unbeaten Big 12 champion, and get left out of this dance?
They could absolutely get left out the way things set up. I think Baylor has come from too far back now. We've seen teams lose in these past few weeks here that we didn't expect to lose. So they're not out of it, but they're going to need some help, obviously.
We'll talk more about this as we go, but I just want to point out one thing quickly. The committee does something very smart or very devious, depending on how you look at it. They leave themselves room to do whatever they want. By putting Alabama and Penn State where they did, they use the eye test. Then by putting Clemson where they did, they use the strength of record. So basically, they've sent a message. We'll do what we want to do, and that, I think, will be the message going the rest of the way through.
Do not trust this committee at any cost because they're playing games with the American public. They know how it's going to end up because they have all the chess pieces. And it's also worth remembering, Rob Mullins, the chairman of this committee, he's also the athletic director at Oregon. Now, he says he excuses himself or recuses himself. He's standing outside pulling strings, though.
All right. So, listen, the best thing about this whole system, it gives us so much to talk about, and we will as we continue. But now to the NFL, where the Cowboys return to practice today on a short week after beating the Giants in the Monday Nighter in New York. And Dallas will face a very different test this weekend, hosting Kirk Cousins and the Vikings. That's the Sunday night game. And it's a very intriguing matchup, in particular of the quarterbacks. It's the 5th time Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott have faced each other as NFL starters. And Dak has been on the winning side of each of the previous 4. He's won the last 2 by an average of 19 points. So, as I bring my NFL guys into the conversation, Neek and RC, as you look at this matchup, you were making an interesting point this morning about how when we look at Dak and Cousins, and they're the high-profile guys, but they're not necessarily the most important guys on their own team.
Neither of these guys are the most important guys on their own team, not even their own offenses. This game is about Dalvin Cook and Ezekiel Elliott. If you're coaching defense for any one of these teams, you want to say, make sure Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins are the guys that have to beat us. And when you're talking about Kirk Cousins having $84 million guaranteed, or Dak Prescott looking to be the highest paid quarterback in the league, you don't necessarily believe that that's how they should be viewed. But this is going to be about stopping the run and forcing these 2 quarterbacks to win the game.
Yeah, I understand why people could come to that conclusion and say that they're similar, but I think Dak is a cut above Kirk Cousins. Dak has performed in high-profile moments. That's the big criticism about Kirk Cousins. Dak performs and makes big plays in playoff games, in late-season games that mean something. And their offense has been great so far this season, not just because of Zeke. That's, depending on what measure, they're 1 or 3 in offensive efficiency throughout the league. Well, they're good, and Dak is good, and he's doing this even with players dropping passes, which we saw in the last.
No, they're absolutely dropping passes. But if you look at both of their seasons, and we break them down, for 3 games, they both might have been the best quarterback in the league. But then the inconsistencies, the turnovers, when Dak Prescott comes out and you're throwing a slant and you throw the ball right to Antoine Bethea, who's standing at the line of scrimmage, those are the plays that you can't have happen. Kirk Cousins entering 4 fourth quarters where you're trailing 11 times, you're 0-10-1. And so when you look at these 2 dudes, I just believe that if you were like, hey, Dallas, we'll give you Kirk Cousins, you'd be like, keep him. But I believe Minnesota would be the same way if you told them they could have Dak Prescott. And to me, that's a scary feeling for 2 teams who have championship aspirations.
And that's where we disagree. I think you're right about for 3 games, depending on the stretch, both of them were the best in the league. But Dak didn't regress nearly as much as Kirk Cousins did. His numbers were still good. I think the issue with the Cowboys is their defense has been really bad, and they put Dak in terrible field position. During that 3-game stretch when we were all talking about Dak was inconsistent and they were bad, they were losing, they were near the top of the league, top 3 for drive yards gained. The problem was they were starting back on their own 10. So it's not all on Dak. Dak isn't Patrick Mahomes, but he's above Kirk Cousins.
You want to make a comparison? The easiest way to settle this argument, did Kirk Cousins lose to the Jets this year? I rest my case. Meanwhile, to the next quarterback in the conversation, the last time we saw Patrick Mahomes under center was October 17th. Remember that? It was a Thursday night. He dislocated that kneecap in a victory over the Broncos. He's missed the last 2 games for the Chiefs. His status for this weekend against the Titans is uncertain. That's one of several big NFL stories that I want to bring Jeremy Fowler, our NFL insider, in on. He's with us from Bristol. And let's start there. Jeremy, what are you hearing about the latest on Mahomes and his recovery?
Well, Greeny, I continue to hear chances are pretty good that Mahomes plays this week. Not a guarantee, but pretty good. One source classified it to me as 50-50, but it's trending upward. Now, it's known around the league, Andy Reid has that backup quarterback swag. He loves preparing backups. He's good at it, so if he has to roll with Matt Moore, he is cool. But this week, Week 10 was always a more realistic outlook for Mahomes than the last 2 weeks. They're playing an AFC opponent, so there are playoff implications. So overall, it's looking pretty good. The Chiefs slow played this. They're not dumb. They know they have the most important knee in the NFL.
Well, here's another knee. How about Jacoby Brissett? Where are we with him?
Well, Greeny, the Colts are absolutely thrilled that this guy even has a chance to play. MCL sprain, are you kidding me? They knew it could have been so much worse as he was laying there on the ground, but they're going to be extra cautious, so don't expect a whole lot of work Wednesday and Thursday. Friday is the big day here. They're going to see how much he can take. They really won't make a decision until then, and I'm told the Colts believe their roster and their ability to handle adversity is strong enough that if they have to play the Dolphins with Brian Hoyer, the Destroyer, they're ready to get after it.
Those would be the suddenly surging Dolphins, Jeremy. Let's show them respect. And finally, Kareem Hunt has served his 8-game suspension. He's scheduled to play for the Browns on Sunday. What are their plans for him?
Their plans are big. They like this guy as a focal point. They watched him in the offseason. He wowed them for months. They said this guy can be a catalyst for us. And look, he's number 4 in their depth chart right now at running back. Are you kidding me? This is a guy who led the league in rushing less than 2 years ago as a rookie, 1,300 plus yards in Kansas City. But here's the thing, at 2-6, with a team that's scrutinized Sunday to Monday, how much is it really going to matter? You talk to coaches, people around the league, they see a disjointed team without much of an identity that's sort of calling plays at random, hoping they don't get penalized. And so, the Browns simply hope that Hunt could come in and be a spark, help Odell Beckham, bring some balance to the offense, but he's going to play with Nick Chubb at running back, behind him, alongside him. They'll get creative with this guy, maybe not the first week, but over the next few.
All right, Jeremy, well done. Thank you so much. Good to see you. As always, let me bring it here. That's quite a sentence. Calling plays at random, just hoping they don't get penalized.
That's not real football.
That's setting your sights really low for a team that was thinking championship thoughts. And that's where I want to begin this conversation. I think all of us expected, oh, my goodness, they're going to be playing half a season and then they're going to add Kareem Hunt. What does it actually mean for a team that is 2-6 and has started as badly as they have?
It don't mean nothing. Like the problem there isn't that they don't have enough playmakers. They have plenty of playmakers. The problem is they are a poorly coached team and they need an adult in the room. And the closest adult that they have in the room right now is Odell Beckham Jr. He's the guy that they should be following. He's the guy that he should be getting the ball to. He's the guy that should be the leader of this team right now because he's the guy who seems most mature in this situation. I know how crazy that sounds, but when I see him speak and when I hear Freddie Kitchens speak or I hear Mayfield speak, the guy who I want to follow is Odell Beckham.
No, absolutely. He's also playing that way. You look at the effort Odell Beckham Jr. plays with, the passion that he's playing with, how much it still matters to him to win football games. It's only been about that for Odell Beckham Jr. this year, but also this means nothing. Could you imagine thinking about this team preseason? All we said was after 8 weeks, they'll get Kareem Hunt and add him to what they'll be doing offensively. Well, they aren't doing anything. And it doesn't matter if you're calling plays at random, you could have Jim Brown back there and it's not going to help this team. They have to get better.
To be clear, you think they're done? For this
They
season,
are
they're
done. They are done. And now, the schedule changes and they can win some games, but this team cannot be successful.
I don't care about the schedule because last week they made me look stupid. Because last week I was the one on here saying they're going to have a late season push because they have a lot of bad teams on their schedule. The problem is they are also a bad team. So bad teams playing bad teams, they'll get a win here or there.
Yep.
But what you made in the meeting this morning was that team is due. And they just bring in Hunt, just put a little sprinkles on it, little sparkles.
It's still doo-doo.
Yeah, you still doo-doo.
But that's the huge thing I said last week was coming into the season changing or the schedule changing that they had to change. And you saw them in the post-game press conference talk about turnovers and they talked about penalties because that's what they're focusing on. They need to be focusing on winning and making sure you make the winning plays. And without a coach that can delegate, organize, and set up, you can't win football games.
Yeah, look, I mean, you can't make the schedule argument when you just lost to Denver without their quarterback. That's pretty much it. I agree.
Teams do seem to get better when Joe Flacco's hurt.
And he's the first quarterback ever to get significantly injured in a post-game press conference. But he wound up missing that one and Cleveland Falls. And with Baltimore playing as well as they are, probably hopelessly out of it. Okay, much more football as we go. But now we go to the Garden, where last night the top 4 teams in college basketball were facing off against each other. Let's pick it up with Kentucky, Michigan State. Cassius Winston, the only preseason All-American who is unanimous. And Jay Williams, he had it going early on.
Oh, Cassius Winston, the best point guard in college basketball. Remember last year, he took this team to a Final Four.
Showed off the vision there early, but then off the bench came freshman Tyrese Maxey.
Tyrese Maxey, a kid from Texas, knocking down shots from the outside. 26 points off the bench, and Greeny, as a freshman, great poise. He led this team offensively.
Spectacular. He had 11 points in the first half. Again, off the bench, and Kentucky had a 10-point lead.
John Wall liking it.
And loving it. Under 5 minutes to go now in the game. Michigan State is down 7. That's Aaron Henry on the right wing for the 3, so we got ourselves a 4-point game. Now here's Winston driving. Somehow gets this one to go, plus the foul. He would make the free throw. We got a 2-point game. Kentucky's next possession. What are you going to do? How about that shot?
Give the ball to Maxey. Now remember, this is not the same Michigan State team without Joshua Langford.
Maxey was knocking it down, and Dickie V was fired up.
Are you serious? Are you serious? Come on, Maxey. You're a freshman. This is your first game. Are you for real? Oh, man. Look at that swag. Mr. Calipari, you got a star.
Maxey with 26 off the bench, most ever by a Kentucky freshman in his debut, and Kentucky wins it 69-62. That was one of the games. How about the other, Kansas and Duke?
Okay, boys. Okay, boys.
Jay Will is fired up. It's alma mater day here. Look who's taking in the game. It's Tom Thibodeau. And some guy sitting next to him. That might have been Kevin Durant. Okay, here we go. Now we got ball movement. Jayhawks starting fast.
Abaji knocking down a big-time 3. Look, he's going to be a critical piece to this team for Bill Self. Played extremely well in the first half.
But Duke would do this with defense last night. How about the steal and they go the other way?
Force plus 20 turnovers for Kansas. And that's what Duke basketball has to be. They have to be great defensively. Trey Jones with the great pass. Cassius Stanley with the bang.
Trey Jones, the one guy from last year that you remember, the one freshman who did not wind up going to the NBA. The Blue Devils had been way behind, but they come back to tie it up. 13 seconds ago, Kansas down 3. Questionable shot selection here. They try for 2 twos down 3. They don't wind up getting either to go, and in the end, it is Duke that gets the win, 68-66. So 2 huge games at the Garden, and they did not disappoint. And again, the numbers next to the team names were 1, 2, 3, and 4 last night. So most people are just getting set for their college basketball season. In your opinion, which is the best team in college basketball as we begin the year?
Okay, you ready for this, Greeny?
Yeah.
So yesterday, Kentucky voted a blue state. It looks like everything's moving in the blue state direction for Kentucky. But I think overall, Kentucky will be a red state. I think Louisville, it will be the best team in the country. Kentucky and Louisville, this battle that we all know that they have, will be one of the most epic battles we've seen in college basketball this year. Now, Tyrese Maxey, one of the best players in the country. Khalil Whitney is a guy that is actually projected above him in the draft. But Jordan Nora is the name in college basketball. He will be a stud for Chris Mack and Louisville this year.
Wow. So Louisville, number 1. Again, we had 1, 2, 3, and 4 last night, but Louisville from, if you will, from outside the district, or however we're using your political terminology here, you think they're the best team in the country?
I just think that Chris Mack has his team loaded. They're ready to go. Kentucky will be number 1 in the projected polls this week after they beat Michigan State. But I'm just telling you, Louisville has the experience, and they have the talent to win the whole thing.
Wow. All right, we have more of this as we go. Meanwhile, as I get up and go, I have a college basketball.
You weren't ready for that.
No, you threw me off. But wait, I have a question for you. How about Memphis freshman James Wiseman, 28 and 11 in his debut? How good is this guy?
James Wiseman has the potential to be the first pick in the NBA draft. This kid is talented. 6'10", can shoot the ball from the outside, has great hands, can dominate down low on the bucket. Also, I mean, his versatility overall, Green, is what makes this kid special. Memphis has one of the top recruiting class in the country. Also, Precious Achiuwa. That's the name you also need to recognize. This team's going to be loaded. They're stacked.
Sorry, I walked in front of you. Next, Jags coach Doug Marrone says Nick Foles will get back his starting job this week from Gardner Minshew. RC, is that the right call?
This is the right move. You went out and got Nick Foles because he was a Super Bowl MVP. He was a guy you felt you could trust and take you to the next level. And that's what they're expecting him to do. You like that Gardner Minshew kept this team afloat, kept them in wild card contingency, but now it's time for Nick Foles to come in and do what he was brought to Jacksonville to do, and that's take them to the playoffs.
Next, on Monday, The Athletic reported the Chargers are considering a move to London, partly because of concerns over the LA market. Yesterday, Chargers owner Dean Spanos emphatically denied that report. Listen to this.
It's total. Okay? We're not going to London. We're not going anywhere. We're playing in Los Angeles. This is our home, and this is where we're planning to be for a long time. Okay. Period. Okay? And if you want me to say it again, I'll say it again. That story. Okay? Thank you.
Say it with me, everybody. You stay classy, San Diego. Here's the deal. First of all, he's the same guy who promised everyone he would never leave San Diego because that's his home forever, and then jumped to LA as fast as he could. And look, I'm not suggesting they are indeed moving to London, and there are a lot of issues that would come with moving a team to London. But I am curious to know if you guys think that it is sort of beneath a person and his position in the National Football League to be talking that way. And we had to bleep out a bunch of soundbite, a lot of words that he used there. And I got to tell you, I found it off-putting.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a potty mouth. And that's what happens sometimes. It frankly doesn't bother me. I don't hold them to some higher degree of like ethical behavior. And I frankly don't think profanity is unethical. Like, I'm fine with it. We don't need to beep it for me. It's fine with me. But I just think the part that bothers me more is like he's acting like it's absurd that anyone would suggest it. Boy, you just moved a couple weeks ago. Right. Like, you could move your team anytime. Like, that's who you are.
And you played in front of 40,000 people rooting for the other team this past Sunday.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm different than what Dominique is on this. Now, we've been in rooms with these people. We definitely don't hold them to a different moral standard. But when it comes to players, if a player was speaking this way, it will be all types of things about his character, understanding what position he is in. Oh, there are people watching you. Well, this guy owns the team. And so if you're going to talk to these players this way, if you're going to ask them to conduct themselves in a certain way, then you need to as well. And it's not absurd that someone would think you would move a team because, bruh, you did it already.
Yeah.
Correct. Look, I have no issue with him disputing the story. And if he's frustrated by the fact that this was reported erroneously, that's fine. Man. There's a different way to say it.
That was Baker. We'd be flipping out.
Absolutely.
Correct. As we continue on Get Up, meanwhile, we got Russell Wilson, Carson Wentz, Aaron Rodgers, why one of